Hello and welcome back to Macro Friday here at ScriptcaseByJamie. Every Friday, right here, we have a new macro for you to learn more about Scriptcase. Now, all of these macros are available online at the NetMake website. And of course, today's macro, we shall dive into the SCStatistic macro. And what's it all about? Well, let's find out, shall we? Hello and welcome back to Macro Friday. Today we have the SCStatistic macro. Now this macro, well, this is pretty interesting actually. It's pretty complicated as well, but a very interesting macro. So imagine you have a large or a big pile of numbers. And well, that happens quite often, right? And these could maybe be sales totals, student grades, statistics, or whatever it is that you'd usually have to write a ton of math code to find out the average, the biggest number, the smallest number, the middle number, the number, yes, that's in the middle of all of those numbers. Well, instead of you going through this big pile of numbers and trying to figure it all out with, say, 200-300 lines of code or even 100 lines of code, well, you can just use this macro. And it's pretty straightforward and at the same time also pretty complicated. So let's have a look at it, shall we? So today's macro allows us to get the average number of an array. So we basically create a list of numbers and we place them all into an array. And then from this array, we then need to decide if we are looking at, say, everyone, so the entire population, or maybe just a small group, so a sample maybe. And then we also want to know the result of something specific, right? And that is, well, how we use this, or what we would use this macro for. So I've placed everything directly straight here into this sample file to start off with today, because as you see, it has quite a few options. Okay, so you basically start off by creating your list of numbers, your array, which we have right here. And these are then my numbers equals array 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 50 again, and 60. Okay. And then from that, we then run a math report using basically our SCStatistic macro. We place in our numbers and then we decide whether we want to obtain a number, our end result, our variable or whatever math equation that we have there. That is what we then need to decide. At the same time, decide whether we're looking at the entire population, so everyone, or just a small sample of that population. And then if we want to change for sample, we change here from P to A. Okay, and then we can just echo out the math report. And then we have a number, which is basically another array number. Now this array is assigned basically to the answer array of this macro. So you can use these answers or this new array of numbers that we have here, and each of these would equate to a specific response that you would want to have output. Okay, so we're already using this macro SCStatistic, and then we're going to say, right, we want to look at all the numbers. Here are our numbers that we want to sift through. And then this is what we want to output using, well, our report. Okay, and so we can say 0. So math report equals 0, for instance, or our array equals 0. And that would mean the average number that we want to output. And then we have here 9, which is then the highest number. So we can say we want a standard deviation, we want an amplitude, we want different values, we want total values. And then we just change these numbers here. And then here I'll say 6. And this is then the total value, right? Total values. And that would be R and not is. And now if I just run that again, well, the output would then be quite different from what we had before. Now it is 7. Okay, and that then outputs that data for you without having to write all those lines of code to actually create those calculations. Now, by using this macro, you will then speed up the development and creation, say, of dashboards, for instance, or, well, just any other mathematical equation that you would want. Now, it's important to note, I've added the note up here that it is pretty fast. And this process is really fast because you have the array in one go. And then, like I say, for creating dashboards, this can save you writing, 50 lines of code just for that one dashboard. Now, overall, you can, of course, save a lot more code by using it then also within your other applications. Okay, so that is this week's macro. I hope you have enjoyed it, and check back next week for the next macro that we'll be looking at. And of course, as we go on, I think we will be having a special macro day where we'll be having more than one macro, but then combining some of these macros to create something awesome. So a macro application. Be sure to check that out, coming up soon. Thanks very much for watching, and until next week for the next macro day.